Where are you dragging yourself, you pig? My family's been hungry for an hour and the holiday dinner table isn't set yet. And don't forget to buy everyone presents, her husband bellowed into the phone on New Year's Eve, not yet knowing the surprise that was waiting for him. Welcome to Betty's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now, let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. It was New Year's Eve, 5:45 in the evening. Maya was standing in the endless line at the big box grocery store, clutching 2 heavy baskets of groceries to her chest, and she could feel her legs trembling from exhaustion. Her phone vibrated in her jacket pocket, and already knowing who it was, she slowly pulled it out. Omar flashed on the screen. She put the receiver to her ear. "Where are you dragging yourself, you pig?" came her husband's voice, rough with anger. "My family's been hungry for an hour, and the holiday dinner table isn't set yet. And don't forget to buy everyone presents." Maya listened in silence as he went on, ranting about how worthless she was, what a useless homemaker she'd become, and how his mother had been right about her all along. People in line turned around. Some looked at her with sympathy, others with curiosity. Maya didn't answer. She just stared at a spot in front of her and thought that this New Year's would be the last one she would ring in as Omar's wife. But to understand why that thought brought her not fear, but a strange, almost physical sense of relief, she had to go back several years, to the time when it all began. Maya Davis was born in a smaller southern town, about 300 miles from Atlanta, in a family where love was shown through actions, not just words. Her father, Darren Hayes, worked as an engineer at the local manufacturing plant. Her mother, Valerie Hayes, taught English literature and composition at the high school. They were never rich, but their home was always filled with warmth and mutual respect. Maya grew up as an only child, which was unusual for the time. Her mother couldn't have any more children after a difficult birth, so all of her parents' love was focused on her. But this didn't make her spoiled. On the contrary, she understood from childhood that she had to earn everything in life herself. Maya did well in school, though she wasn't always top of her class. She excelled in the humanities, especially literature and history. She devoured the books her mother brought home from the school library and dreamed of one day moving to a big city, seeing the world that seemed so vast and interesting from the window of their small third-floor apartment in the brick building complex. After high school, Maya enrolled in the College of Education at the State University in the county seat. Her parents were proud, though the parting was tough on everyone. Her mother cried on the platform. Her father hugged his daughter tight and whispered, "You got this, baby girl. You're strong." And she did get through it. She lived in a dorm room, tutored on the side so she wouldn't have to ask her parents for extra money, and studied conscientiously. By her junior year, she realized that teaching wasn't exactly her calling, but she finished her degree with honors because she was determined to see things through. After college, Maya moved back to her hometown and started working as an elementary school teacher. The job was demanding, but she found purpose in it. The children loved her, and the parents respected her. She was strict, but fair. A teacher who never raised her voice at students and knew how to explain the hardest subject so that every child understood. Time passed. Maya turned 25, then 27, then 29. Her friends started getting married and having babies, one after the other, but she was still single. It wasn't that she didn't have admirers. She did. But they all seemed somehow small to her. Not physically, of course. She just didn't feel the spark she'd read about in books when she was around them. Her mother began gently bringing up the subject of starting a family. "Maya, you'll be 30 soon," she'd say over Sunday dinner. "I was already rocking you at your age." Maya brushed it off, but deep down, she knew. Time is passing, and I'm still alone. And then, Omar came along. They met at a mutual friend's birthday party. Maya was 31, and she had almost resigned herself to the idea of staying single. It wasn't that it bothered her much. She had learned to enjoy her independence, the freedom to manage her time and money however she wanted. Omar immediately stood out from the crowd, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a charming smile. He worked as a project manager for a construction firm, made good money, and drove a nice SUV. By the standards of their small town, he was quite the catch. He approached her first, offered her a drink, and started a conversation. He talked eagerly and at length about himself, his work, and his future plans. Maya listened, nodded, and occasionally offered a comment. His attention flattered her. He was handsome, self-assured, and he looked at her as if she were the most fascinating woman in the room. After the party, he offered to drive her home. Maya accepted. At her apartment building, he kissed her hand and asked for her number. She gave it to him. The courtship began. Omar called every day, sent flowers to her job, and invited her out to nice restaurants and the movies. He was generous with compliments and gifts. Maya felt like the heroine of a romantic movie. Finally, she thought, a real man has finally shown up in my life. Her parents were thrilled, especially her mother. She had already started looking at fabric for a wedding dress, even though no one had proposed yet. "Such a solid man," she exclaimed. "You can tell he's serious, reliable. You'll be safe with him." Her father was more reserved. He watched Omar carefully when he came over, asking questions about his job and his family. Omar answered willingly, smiled, and joked. But one time, when he and Maya were alone in the kitchen, her father said, "Baby girl, don't rush things. Get to know him better. Something about him just doesn't sit right with me." He waved his hand dismissively. Maya didn't take his words seriously. Her father was always overly cautious. 6 months into their relationship, Omar proposed. It happened in a crowded restaurant. He got down on one knee, pulled out a velvet box with a ring, and gave a beautiful speech about how she had changed his life and how he couldn't imagine a future without her. Maya was moved to tears. She said yes, without hesitation. They had a wedding 3 months later, modest but beautiful. Maya wore the white dress she and her mother had spent a month picking out. Omar was in an expensive suit, looking sharp and pleased. In the photos, they looked like the perfect couple. But even at the wedding, the first red flag appeared, one that Maya chose to ignore. Omar's mother, Zoe Price, a short, heavy woman with a sharp gaze, sat all evening with her lips pressed tight. She critically inspected everything: the venue, which she found too simple, the food, which wasn't as good as at Aisha's daughter's wedding, and Maya's relatives, who looked a little too working class. When it came time for the traditional toast from the groom's parents, Zoe Price stood up, raised her glass, and said, "Well, Omar, you've made your choice. Let's see what kind of homemaker she turns out to be. My mother, your grandmother, bless her heart, always said, 'You can tell a good wife by the cleanliness of her home and the fullness of her husband's stomach.' We can only hope that Maya lives up to our expectations." The guests shifted uncomfortably. Maya felt the blood rush to her cheeks. She looked at Omar, expecting him to react somehow, to defend her, but he just smirked and said, "Mom, really? Let's just drink to the happy couple." After the wedding, Maya moved into Omar's place, a small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town. It was a rental, but Omar assured her they would soon save up for a place of their own. "You'll see," he said. "In a couple of years, we'll buy a nice 2-bedroom, maybe even a 3-bedroom. I make good money." The first few months of marriage were happy. Maya happily settled into their little nest, cooking dinners and waiting for her husband to come home from work. Omar would come back tired but content. They watched TV together, discussed weekend plans, and dreamt about the future. But gradually, something began to shift. It happened so slowly, so subtly, that Maya didn't notice it at first. Then one day, Omar came home from work and without saying hello, just grumbled, "Not this pasta again. Don't you know how to cook anything else?" Maya was taken aback. She had made tomato pasta, the very dish Omar had praised just a month ago, calling it divine. "I thought you liked it," she started. "I liked a lot of things before," Omar interrupted, sitting down at the table. "Whatever, I'm hungry. Let's just eat." She put it down to exhaustion from a hard day at work. Everyone has bad days. Then came another incident. Maya was planning to visit her parents on the weekend. She tried to see them at least every other week. Omar suddenly frowned. "You're going to them again? We were just there last weekend." "That was 3 weeks ago," Maya gently corrected him. "So what? I wanted us to spend the day together. Maybe take a drive out of town? But you're always running off to your parents." "I'm going to my parents," she repeated. "Are they children? Can't they manage without you?" Maya felt a sting of hurt, but again she found an excuse. He just wants to spend more time with her. That's a good thing, right? It means he loves her. She called her parents and said she would come the following week. Her mother was disappointed, but tried not to show it. "Of course, baby girl, whatever you say. You young people need to be together." They never did go for that drive out of town that day. Omar lay on the couch in front of the TV for half the day and then left to drink beer with his buddies. He came home well past midnight, drunk and loud. Maya didn't say a word. Then, about a year into their marriage, an event occurred that changed everything. Maya's maternal grandmother, Francesca Hayes, passed away. She had lived alone in a small 2-bedroom condo downtown, the same condo where Maya's mother had grown up. Her grandmother was a strong woman who had survived the loss of her husband and many hardships. She seemed immortal, and then suddenly a stroke, and 3 days later, she was gone. Maya grieved deeply. She loved her grandmother, often visited her as a child, listened to her stories of the past, and helped her around the house. Her grandmother was the only person who never gave unsolicited advice, never criticized, just loved her, quietly and unconditionally. Omar refused to go to the funeral. "I have an important client meeting," he said. "You know how it is. Work is work. Your parents will be there. Why do I need to be?" Maya didn't argue. She went alone, stood by the casket, and said her final goodbye. She returned home broken, her eyes red from crying. Omar was sitting in the kitchen eating dinner. "Well, you're back," he said, without turning around. "Your mother called you. Something about the will." Maya called her mother and heard the news that turned her life upside down. Her grandmother had left the condo to her, not to her mother or other relatives, but to Maya. The will clearly stated, "I bequeath my condo, located at address, to my granddaughter, Maya Davis." Her mother was surprised, but not hurt. "Mom always loved you especially," she said on the phone. "And it's right. Your father and I have our house, and you and Omar can use it." When Maya told her husband about the inheritance, his eyes gleamed with greed. "A 2-bedroom condo downtown?" he asked. "That's fantastic. We can sell it, add my savings, and finally get a nice 3-bedroom in a new neighborhood, or maybe even upgrade my SUV." Maya felt something clench inside her. "Omar," she said slowly, "I don't want to sell Grandma's condo. It's a memory of her. I grew up going there." He frowned. "What do you mean you don't want to? Maya, this is a practical decision. Why do we need 2 apartments?" "We don't need 2 apartments," Maya replied, quietly but firmly. "That condo is mine. It was willed specifically to me, and I want us to move in and live there." Omar opened his mouth to argue, but he looked into his wife's eyes and stopped. For the first time, he saw something there he hadn't noticed before. Steel. "Fine," he ground out. "Do whatever you want." They moved into her grandmother's condo a month later. Maya lovingly set up her new, or rather old, familiar home. She kept her grandmother's china cabinet with the glassware, hung up old family photos on the wall, and put the geranium her grandmother loved so much on the windowsill. Omar walked around the condo looking displeased, criticizing the outdated decor and demanding she throw out all the junk. But Maya stood her ground. For the first time in their marriage, she openly contradicted her husband, and strangely, it gave her strength. Time went on. Maya turned 33, then 34. She and Omar had no children. At first, they kept putting it off. "We need to get financially stable. Let's wait another year." Then Maya had an examination and learned she had health problems. Doctors said she had a chance, but it would require treatment, time, and patience. Omar reacted to the news with poorly concealed irritation. He never said it outright, but Maya could see he blamed her. Once, in the middle of a fight, he snapped, "A normal woman would have had kids by now, but you—" He trailed off. Maya silently left the room. She didn't cry. Her tears had run out about 2 years ago. She continued working at the school, although she often thought about changing careers. A teacher's salary was small but steady. Omar earned more, but he spent most of it on himself: his car, insurance, gas, and his own hobbies. Maya ran the household, paid the utilities, and bought groceries, mostly with her own money. She tried to talk to him about it. "Omar, maybe we should start a joint account. Contribute to shared expenses?" He winced as if in pain. "Maya, are you saying I don't contribute enough to the family? I have expenses you don't understand. The car, insurance, gas, and I have to help my mother." Omar's mother, Zoe Price, lived alone in a neighboring city. Her husband had passed away several years ago, and ever since, she regularly demanded money from her son, for repairs, for medical bills, or just for living expenses. Omar gave it without question. Maya would never have dared to tell him that his mother actually received a decent pension and had savings of her own. Gradually, Zoe Price began to show up at their home more and more often. First for holidays, then for weekends, then just randomly, without warning. She would arrive unannounced, let herself in with the spare key Omar had given her without asking Maya, and settle into the condo as if she owned the place. The first thing she'd do was run a finger along the shelves, checking for dust. Then she'd peer into the refrigerator, click her tongue, and shake her head. "Oh, Omar, she's starving you. Let me make you some real Southern food." Maya clenched her jaw and remained silent. She tried to be polite and welcoming, to please her mother-in-law, but nothing she did was ever right. If she cooked dinner, it was oversalted. If she cleaned the apartment, there was dirt in the corners. If she bought new curtains, they were tacky. If she wore a new dress, she was dressed up like she was going to a club. Omar never defended his wife. He either stayed silent or supported his mother. "Mom has a point. You should listen to her. She's lived a full life." One day, Maya snapped. "Omar," she said when they were alone after one of his mother's visits, "I can't do this anymore. Your mother humiliates me in my own home." "Your home?" Omar scoffed. "Are you the only one living here? This condo is in my name, legally my property, and I have the right to feel comfortable here." Omar's face turned crimson. He stepped closer to her, and for the first time, Maya saw something in his eyes that made her instinctively back up a step. "You," he hissed, "listen to me, and remember it once and for all. You are my wife, and that means everything you have is ours, and my mother will come here whenever she wants. You got that?" Maya didn't answer. She turned away and walked into the kitchen. Her hands were shaking as she poured herself a glass of water. That night, she couldn't sleep for a long time. She lay in the dark, listening to her husband's heavy breathing, and thought. She wondered how she had ended up in this situation, where the charming man who gave her flowers and looked at her with adoring eyes had gone, and what would happen next. And for the first time, the thought flashed through her mind, what if I just leave? But she immediately pushed it away. Where would she go, and why? She had a husband. She had a home. By most people's standards, she had everything she could want. Maybe she was just asking for too much. Maybe this is how marriage was supposed to be: compromises, concessions, patience. She turned onto her side and closed her eyes. Sleep didn't come until dawn. The next few years blurred into a gray monotony for Maya. The days were identical: work, home, cooking, cleaning, rare visits to her parents, endless nitpicking from her mother-in-law, and her husband's indifference. She stopped trying to change the situation. She resigned herself, learned not to react to insults, to let the criticism pass by, and to smile when she wanted to cry. She became a shadow of herself, the woman who had once dreamed of a big world outside the window of a small apartment. Her parents noticed the change. Her mother tried to talk to her several times. "Maya, is everything okay? You seem off." Maya always replied that everything was fine. She was just tired. Her mother didn't believe her, but didn't press. Her father remained silent. But one day, when they were alone in the kitchen, he took his daughter's hand and said, "Remember that we're always here for you, no matter what." Maya nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. A year after that conversation, her father passed away. A sudden heart attack. Maya heard the news over the phone from her tearful mother. She dropped everything and rushed home, forgetting to tell Omar. At the funeral, she sobbed harder than she had in years. Her father had been her rock, her protector, silent but reliable. And now he was gone. Omar came to the funeral but remained distant. He didn't approach his mother-in-law to offer condolences, didn't hug his wife. He stood off to the side with a sour look on his face, constantly checking his watch. On the drive home after the reception, he said, "Great. Now your mother is going to be leaning on us. She'll be whining about being lonely and abandoned." Maya didn't answer. She looked out the car window at the houses flying by and thought her father had been right. He warned her, and she hadn't listened. After her father's death, something shifted in Maya. At first, she didn't even understand what it was. Then one morning, she woke up and suddenly realized, "I cannot live like this anymore." She was 37 years old. She was unhappy in her marriage. She had no children. Her husband didn't love her. Had he ever? Her mother-in-law openly hated her. Life had become an endless rut, one she thought she couldn't escape. But there was a way out. She was just afraid to admit it. Maya started acting cautiously, without drawing attention. First, she secretly put the condo's legal documents into a safe deposit box at the bank. Omar never cared about paperwork, but she wanted to make sure they were secure. Then she started saving money, just a little bit at a time, so her husband wouldn't notice. She transferred a portion of her paycheck to a separate account he didn't know about. She started reading more, not novels like before, but books on psychology and self-development. She learned that what was happening in her family was called emotional abuse, that she wasn't at fault, that she wasn't crazy, overly demanding, or useless. This knowledge gave her strength. Then something happened that she hadn't expected at all. The principal of the school where Maya worked retired. A new person was appointed in her place, Elena Miller, an energetic woman in her 50s who had moved from the capital. She was the complete opposite of her predecessor. Modern, progressive, and full of ideas. Elena Miller quickly noticed Maya. She liked the way she taught, how she interacted with children and parents, and how calmly and professionally she handled conflicts. "Maya Davis," she said one day after a faculty meeting, "you have potential. Why are you still a regular teacher? With your abilities, you could be an assistant principal." Maya was flustered. No one had ever said words like that to her. "I don't know," she mumbled. "I never really thought about it." "Well, you should think about it," Elena Miller smiled. "In our profession, it's important to grow, and not just professionally." That conversation stuck in Maya's head. She truly had never thought about a career track. She thought being an elementary school teacher was the ceiling, that she couldn't climb any higher. But what if she was wrong? 6 months later, Elena Miller offered Maya the position of assistant principal for curriculum and instruction. The salary was higher, the responsibilities greater, but so were the opportunities. "I need to talk to my husband," Maya said, though she already knew his answer. Omar, of course, was against it. "Oh, that's just what we need," he scoffed. "You're already at work constantly. And now what, you won't ever be home? Who's going to cook? Clean?" "I'll find time for everything," Maya replied quietly. "You don't need to be building a career. A woman should be taking care of the house, not running off to meetings." Maya looked at her husband, at his face red with irritation, at his disgustingly tight lips, at his small, angry eyes, and suddenly realized she didn't care. She absolutely did not care what he thought. "I'm accepting the offer," she said, and walked out of the room. Omar yelled something about ingratitude and female foolishness after her. Maya didn't listen. For the first time in years, she had made a decision without consulting him, and it felt wonderful. The job as assistant principal opened up a new world for Maya. She proved to be an excellent organizer, skilled at connecting with people and resolving complex issues. Colleagues respected her for her fairness and professionalism. Parents valued her for always listening and helping. Maya blossomed. She started dressing better, taking care of herself, even smiling, something she hadn't done in a long time. Colleagues noticed the change and were happy for her. At home, of course, things got worse. Omar couldn't forgive his wife's betrayal. He became even more irritable and nitpicky, coming home late and drunk, demanding dinner even though she had asked him to warn her in advance. If the food was cold, he argued. If it was hot, he still found a reason to complain. His mother started visiting almost every weekend. She seemed to sense her influence fading and doubled her efforts. She criticized everything: how Maya dressed, dressing like some kind of director, how she cooked, inedible garbage, and how she managed the house. In my day, women knew how to keep a home. But Maya no longer reacted as painfully as before. She had built an internal wall against which all the attacks shattered. She smiled, nodded, and did things her own way. And in the evenings, when Omar fell asleep in front of the television, she would sit in the kitchen with a cup of tea and plan a future that perhaps wouldn't have a place for this man. Maya turned 39 when her mother passed away. Valerie Hayes faded over several months. The doctor said late-stage cancer. Maya drove to see her every weekend, despite Omar's protests. She sat by the bed, held her hand, and read her favorite poems aloud. In her last days, her mother was very weak, but conscious. One day, she beckoned her daughter closer and whispered, "Maya, promise me." "What, Mom?" "Promise me you will be happy, truly happy. You deserve it. I can see," her mother continued. "I can see you're unhappy with him. I've seen it for a long time. Your father saw it too. We didn't want to interfere. We thought it was your business. But now, promise me, don't waste your life on a man who doesn't value you." "I promise, Mom," Maya whispered. 3 days later, her mother was gone. Everyone came to the funeral, even distant relatives Maya hadn't seen in years. Everyone except Omar. He claimed he had an important business trip he absolutely couldn't cancel. Maya buried her mother next to her father in the old city cemetery. She stood by the fresh grave for a long time, ignoring the cold autumn rain. She was completely alone now. Her parents were gone. She had no children. Her husband had long since stopped being a husband. But it was in that moment, standing in the rain by her parents' graves, that Maya felt not despair, but a strange clarity. She realized that her mother had given her one last lesson, the lesson of not postponing life. After her mother's death, Maya inherited her parents' apartment, the small 2-bedroom where she grew up. She didn't sell it. She rented it out and added the money to her secret account. Omar, upon hearing about the inheritance, immediately started talking about selling again. "Why do you need 2 properties?" he pressed. "We'll sell both, buy a house in the suburbs. I've always dreamed of owning a house." "No," Maya answered flatly. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean exactly that. It is my inheritance, and I will decide what to do with it." Omar's face darkened with anger. He wasn't used to his wife arguing with him. Before, he just had to raise his voice, and she would back down. "Now you're really getting out of line," he hissed. "Did you forget who's in charge here?" Maya looked him in the eye, calmly, without fear. "No one is in charge here," she said. "We are husband and wife, or we should be equal partners. But you, it seems, don't understand that." She turned and walked away. Omar didn't dare stop her. Something in her gaze made him back down. Time went by. Maya turned 40, then 41. She kept working, saving money, and preparing for the day she would finally file for divorce. Why hadn't she left sooner? She didn't know herself. Maybe she was afraid of judgment? Maybe she hoped Omar would change. Maybe she just needed one final push. That push came a week before New Year's Eve. Omar came home drunk. Not heavily, but enough to loosen his tongue. He sat in the kitchen, demanded dinner, and started talking while Maya reheated his food. "You know," he said, poking his fork at the plate, "I was thinking, I'm going to invite everyone over for New Year's. My mom, of course, my brother and his family, maybe a few others." Maya froze. "What do you mean you're going to invite them? We didn't discuss this." "What is there to discuss? It's my house, my family. I want to celebrate with my relatives." "This is my house," Maya said, quietly but firmly. "The condo is in my name." Omar pushed his plate away and looked at his wife. Something dark and dangerous flickered in his eyes. "You know what?" he spat out. "How many years are you going to sing that My Condo song to me? I'm sick of it. As long as we're married, everything is shared, period. So, get ready for the party. I'll give you the guest list tomorrow." He stood up and went into the living room. A minute later, the sound of the television filled the air. Maya remained in the kitchen. She leaned against the wall, feeling her heart pound. No, enough is enough. That night, she made her final decision. Maya spent the next week in a strange state. Outwardly, everything was normal. Work, home, cooking, cleaning. She even started buying groceries for the party. Omar had given her a list of 20 items, not counting the alcohol. But inside, she was perfectly calm, cold as ice. She knew what she was going to do. All she had to do was wait for the right moment. She went to see her lawyer, an old family friend who had helped with the inheritance paperwork. She explained the situation and asked questions. The lawyer confirmed what she already knew. The condo was her personal property, acquired by inheritance. Omar had no legal rights to it. "You can ask him to leave the premises at any moment," the lawyer said. "If he refuses, call the police. They are obligated to assist you." Maya nodded. She wasn't planning to call the police. She knew Omar would leave on his own. He was a coward. He had always been a coward. He just hid it cleverly behind a show of aggression. On December 29th, her mother-in-law called. "Maya, sweetheart," she cooed in a sickly sweet voice. She usually just called her hey or you. "We decided to come early. We'll be there New Year's Eve morning. We need to help you with the cooking. You can't handle it all by yourself." Maya wasn't surprised. She had known for a long time that her mother-in-law's help meant sitting on the couch and giving instructions. "All right," she answered calmly. "Come on over." Omar, hearing the conversation, nodded smugly. "See, Mom cares about you. And you were complaining." Maya remained silent. On December 30th, she worked late. There was a holiday concert at the school. She returned home around 9 o'clock in the evening, tired but composed. Omar was sitting in front of the TV with a beer. "Are you going to eat?" he asked without turning around. "I'm hungry." "I'll heat something up now," Maya replied. She prepared dinner and set the table. Omar ate in silence, staring at his phone. Maya sat across from him and watched him, this stranger she had lived with for almost 10 years, a man who had never once said thank you, who had never asked about her day, who called her a pig and an idiot. "What are you staring at?" he grunted, catching her eye. "Nothing," she answered. "Just thinking." "Well, you should be thinking about tomorrow's menu. Mom loves all the holiday appetizers. Don't forget." "I won't forget." That night, Maya slept soundly and peacefully, for the first time in years. New Year's Eve morning was cold and sunny. Maya woke up at 6 o'clock without an alarm. She lay for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling. Everything changes today. She got up, showered, and dressed. She brewed coffee in the kitchen, drinking it slowly, enjoying the silence. Omar was still asleep. He always slept in, especially on weekends. At 8 in the morning, the doorbell rang. Her mother-in-law, with bags and a disgruntled look on her face, waddled into the hallway. "Why did it take you so long to open the door?" she snapped, instead of saying hello. "I've been standing out here freezing." She was followed by Omar's brother, Victor Jenkins, his wife Sylvia, and their 2 sons. Victor was a copy of his older brother, just as self-satisfied and crude. Sylvia was a quiet, timid woman who never met anyone's gaze. The boys, ages 8 and 10, immediately started running around the condo, grabbing everything. "Well, show me what you've prepared," Zoe demanded, walking into the kitchen. Maya silently opened the refrigerator. It was packed with groceries. She had been shopping all week. Zoe critically inspected the contents. "Is this all the cold cuts? Not enough. Get some more cheese, too. And sparkling wine isn't on the list. Omar doesn't celebrate New Year's without bubbly." "I know what Omar needs," Maya replied calmly. Zoe raised her eyebrows. "Don't you dare disrespect me. I'm his mother. I know better what my son needs." Maya stayed silent. Not yet. It's not time yet. Omar woke up closer to noon. He came out looking sleepy, wearing a stretched-out t-shirt and sweats. His mother immediately rushed to him. "Omar, sweetheart, how did you sleep? Should I make you some coffee?" Maya watched the scene with a strange detachment, as if she were watching someone else's life through a window pane. After lunch, or rather, after the late breakfast Maya cooked for the whole crew, it turned out they were indeed missing some items. Zoe announced triumphantly, "See? I told you!" "Someone needs to go to the store," Omar said, sprawling on the couch. "Then you go," Maya suggested. An awkward silence fell. Omar stared at his wife as if she were an alien. "What? Are you crazy? Am I a woman? To run errands at the store?" "I'm tired. I've been cooking all day." "So what? That's your job to cook. A man needs to rest. Come on, get going before the lines get too long." Maya wanted to object, but her mother-in-law intervened. "Exactly. Hurry up. It's almost 5 o'clock, and we haven't even scratched the surface." Maya silently put on her coat, grabbed her purse, and left the apartment. In the elevator, she pulled out her phone and checked the screen. Almost 5 o'clock. 7 hours until midnight. The store was chaos. New Year's Eve, the day everyone suddenly remembers they forgot to buy something crucial. The lines stretched across the entire sales floor. People shoved at the shelves, snatching the last packages of appetizers and cans of soda. Maya methodically collected the items on the list. She took her time. She almost felt good. Here, among strangers, in this madness, she felt freer than she did at home. She was standing in the checkout line when her phone rang. The screen showed Omar. Maya looked at the call for a few seconds, then tapped the answer button. "Where are you dragging yourself, you pig?" came her husband's roar. "My family's been hungry for an hour, and the holiday dinner table isn't set yet. And don't forget to buy everyone presents." People in line turned around. The woman in front of her shook her head sympathetically. The elderly man behind her grunted disapprovingly. Maya listened in silence. She didn't interrupt, didn't defend herself, didn't cry. She just listened. "And 3 bottles of sparkling wine, no less. Mom likes the semi-sweet kind. Are you listening to me?" "I hear you," Maya said quietly. "Good. Move it then. Be home in half an hour." He hung up. Maya put the phone back in her pocket and looked at the line ahead, about 15 people, no less. Then at her carts full of food, and then at the clock on the wall, 6:15. And suddenly she smiled. The woman in front turned around, surprised. "Is everything all right?" she asked. "Yes," Maya answered. "Everything is perfectly fine." She pulled out her phone and sent a short text, not to Omar, but to her old friend Keisha, whom she hadn't seen in years. Omar never approved of that friendship. "Keisha, hey, happy almost New Year's. I'm getting divorced today. We'll tell you all about it later." A reply came within a minute. Finally, "It's about damn time. Stay strong. I've got your back." Maya smiled again. She paid for the groceries, left the store, and got into her car. For a few minutes, she just sat there, staring straight ahead. Then she started the engine and drove home. Home to her condo, which was currently filled with strangers who considered themselves the owners of her life. But not for long. On the way, Maya thought about how the last 10 years had passed. How many times she had forgiven, endured, and kept silent. How many times she had wanted to leave and stayed. How she had lost herself in this marriage, and how little by little she had begun to find herself again. She remembered her parents, their quiet, peaceful love, how her father would bring her mother flowers for no reason, how her mother would bake his favorite cookies, and he would wash the dishes so she could rest, how they looked at each other with tenderness and respect. Omar had never looked at her that way. Maybe he just didn't know how to love, or maybe he simply didn't want to. It didn't matter anymore. Maya parked near the building, got out of the car, and pulled the bags of groceries out of the trunk. They were heavy, so many of them, enough for a whole crowd. She stood in the cold, holding those bags, and suddenly realized she didn't want to carry them upstairs. She didn't want to cook a holiday dinner for people who didn't respect her. She didn't want to smile and pretend everything was okay. She didn't want to, and she wouldn't. Maya put the bags back in the trunk, locked the car, and walked to the entrance. In the elevator, she pulled the key ring from her purse. She found the small key to the safe deposit box and gently stroked it with her finger like a talisman. The condo documents and her insurance papers were in there. The elevator stopped on her floor. Maya got out and walked to her door. She could hear voices and laughter behind it. Her mother-in-law was telling a loud story. Victor was cackling. Maya opened the door and stepped into her new life. The hallway smelled of her mother-in-law's perfume, sickly, cloyingly sweet. Maya took off her coat and carefully hung it on the rack. Loud conversation drifted from the living room. "Where are the groceries?" Omar's voice boomed. Maya didn't answer. She took off her boots, put on her house slippers, the ones her mother-in-law called rags, and walked into the room. The scene she found was painfully familiar. Zoe was perched in the armchair, the very one that had once belonged to Maya's grandmother. Omar was sprawled on the sofa, his feet propped up on the coffee table. Victor was sitting next to his brother, both staring at their phones. Sylvia was huddled in the corner of the couch like a frightened mouse. The children were running rampant through the apartment, and one of them had already broken a porcelain figurine Maya had brought back from her one international trip. "Well, finally," Zoe pursed her lips. "We're starving to death here, and she's out strolling. Where are the bags?" Omar didn't even look up from his phone. "In the car," Maya replied calmly. A pause. Omar slowly turned his head. "In the car? How?" "Exactly that. In the trunk." "And you left them there?" "Yes." Omar threw his phone aside and jumped off the sofa. His face began to turn red, a sure sign of an impending storm. "Are you out of your mind? That's all the food for the party. It'll freeze." "It won't freeze. It's about 41 degrees outside, not 22. Zoe gasped and clutched her chest, a habitual gesture she used every time she wanted attention. "Omar, what is she saying? She's making fun of us." "Mom, calm down." Omar walked right up to his wife. Now they were standing almost face to face. She could smell his cologne mixed with the scent of sweat and beer. "You clearly didn't understand," he ground out through clenched teeth. "Now you're going downstairs, bringing everything up, and starting dinner in the next 5 minutes, as you should. Clear?" Maya did not look away. "No, it's not clear," she said, "because that's not going to happen." The next few seconds seemed like an eternity. She watched Omar's face change from confusion to fury, saw the vein throbbing at his temple, and his fists clench. "You—" he choked on his anger. "What are you doing? In front of everyone? In front of my mother? In front of your mother? In front of my brother? In front of everyone?" Maya spoke evenly, not raising her voice. "I am no longer going to tolerate it." "Tolerate? Tolerate what?" "Tolerate you and your relatives. That's all." Zoe leaped out of the armchair with a surprising agility for her size. "How dare you, Omar? Did you hear that? She is insulting us in our own home." "Your home?" Maya turned to her mother-in-law. "Excuse me, Zoe, but this is my home, my condo. It was willed to me by my grandmother and is in my name. You are guests here, or rather, you were guests." The silence became almost physical. Victor got off the sofa. His wife shrank even further into the corner. The children fell silent, sensing that something serious was happening. "What are you talking about?" Omar grabbed Maya's shoulder. "You're my wife. Everything you have is ours." Maya calmly removed his hand from her shoulder. No, Omar, it's not ours. This condo was inherited by me before or during the marriage. By law, it is my personal property. You have absolutely no rights to it. You can check with a lawyer if you don't believe me. You can't be serious, Omar stammered. He didn't know what to say. In 10 years of marriage, his wife had never spoken to him in that tone. He was used to her agreeing, conceding, keeping quiet. Are you drunk or what? He finally managed. Completely sober, for the first time in years. Zoe sank back into the armchair. Her face was pale. Her lips were trembling. Omar, she whispered. What is happening? Why is she talking to us like this? I'll explain. Maya turned to her mother-in-law. This is what's happening. I am asking all of you to leave my condo right now. What? Omar roared. You heard me. Pack your things and go. All of you. Victor stepped forward, puffing out his chest. Listen, what's your deal? It's New Year's Eve and you're throwing a fit. Calm down and go cook while we're still being nice. Maya looked at Victor with an expression that made him instinctively step back. Victor, this is none of your business. This is between Omar and me. Or rather, it's not between us anymore because after the holidays, I am filing for divorce. The words struck like a thunderbolt. Zoe gasped and clutched her chest again. This time it seemed genuine. Omar froze with his mouth open. Victor let out a low whistle. Sylvia looked up, and for the first time that evening, she looked at Maya with something that resembled envy. Divorce! Omar's voice cracked. Are you joking? No, I am absolutely serious. Our marriage is over. It's been over for a long time, to be honest. I just waited too long to admit it. But why? Maya gave a bitter laugh. Why? Are you honestly asking me why? After 10 years of humiliation, insults, and neglect? After you called me a pig, an idiot? After your mother wiped her feet on me for years and you stayed silent? After you never once, not a single time in 10 years, said thank you or asked how I felt or hugged me just because? You want to know why? Because I'm tired. I'm tired of being a maid in my own house. I'm tired of cooking, cleaning, and doing laundry, and only hearing criticism in return. I'm tired of your mother ordering me around like I'm an indentured servant. I'm tired of your indifference, your crudeness, your contempt. She paused to catch her breath. The silence in the room was deafening. Today, you called me a pig in front of everyone. In the line at the grocery store, people looked at me with pity. And you know what? That was the last straw. I will not allow anyone, do you hear me? Anyone, to treat me that way again. Omar stood as if struck by lightning. For the first time in his life, he didn't know what to do. His wife, his quiet, submissive Maya, had suddenly turned into an unfamiliar woman. A woman with burning eyes and a voice of steel. You can't do this, he stammered. We have a family. 10 years. What family, Omar? What are you talking about? Family is when people love and respect each other. What do we have? You come home, you eat, you watch TV, you sleep. I am service staff to you, not even a person. That's not true. It is true, and you know it. Zoe finally found her voice. Omar, don't listen to her. She's gone mad. We need to call a doctor. Zoe Price. Maya turned to her. My mental health is perfectly fine. For the first time in years, I repeat. But you should indeed consult a professional because the way you treat your daughters-in-law is not normal. It's pathological. Zoe choked with indignation. How dare... Omar! Mom, be quiet, Omar said unexpectedly. Everyone looked at him in surprise. He ran a hand over his face, as if trying to wake up from a bad dream. Maya, his voice became almost pleading. Let's talk, alone, without everyone here. What is there to talk about, Omar? Everything has been said. No, wait. I didn't realize you were so unhappy. You never said anything. I said things many times. You didn't listen, but I can change. We can start over. Maya shook her head. No, Omar, it's too late. Much too late. Victor, who had been shifting his weight for a while, finally lost it. All right, enough of this circus. New Year's is in a few hours, and we're standing here listening to some woman's hysterics. Omar, deal with your wife, and we'll go to the store for a while since he shot Maya a contemptuous look, couldn't be bothered. Victor, Maya spoke calmly, but her voice was laced with steel. I don't think you understood. I'm asking all of you to leave, including you, your wife, and children, and your mother, and Omar. Are you completely nuts? Victor stepped toward her. Where are we supposed to go? We drove in from out of state. That is not my problem. There are hotels, there are friends. You'll figure it out. Victor raised his hand, but Omar grabbed his arm. Stop. Don't. Omar, what are you doing? I said don't. The brothers stared at each other. Something in Omar's gaze made Victor lower his hand. Fine, he spat out. Have it your way, but I'm not letting this go. You will, Maya said, because if you raise a hand to me, I'm calling the police, and you'll have big problems. She took her phone from her pocket and demonstratively placed it on the coffee table. I'm not kidding. Any attempt to use force against me, and I'm calling the police. This condo is my property, and I have every right to ask you to leave it. If you refuse, the police will help. Zoe, who had been sitting in the armchair all this time, suddenly burst into loud sobs, crying like a child. Why? She wailed. Why is this happening to us? We treated her like family, and she's a snake, a viper. Zoe Price. Maya didn't raise her voice. You never treated me like family. From the very first day, you made it clear I wasn't good enough for your son. You criticized everything I did. You humiliated me at every opportunity and turned Omar against me. So let's skip the theatrics. Theatrics? Zoe jumped up. I raised you. I taught you how to cook, how to clean, how to keep a house, and you didn't teach me anything. I knew how to do all of that before I met your son, and I did it willingly until I realized that no one appreciated my efforts. Maya checked the time. It's 6:30. I am giving you 1 hour to pack. You must all be out of the condo by 7:30. No exceptions. And if we don't leave, Victor challenged, then I'll call the police, as I said. You wouldn't dare. I dare. They stared at each other, Maya and the 3 adults who were used to ordering her around. And for the first time in all those years, she felt no fear, only weariness and a strange, almost physical relief. Omar, she turned to her husband, you also have to go. You can take necessities. You can pick up the rest later. After the holidays, we'll call and discuss the divorce details. Maya, the conversation is over. The next hour passed in a haze. Zoe continued to lament and sob, cursing the ungrateful snake. Victor mumbled obscenities as he packed. Sylvia silently dressed the children, and Maya noticed that the corners of her mouth were slightly turned up, as if in a secret smile. Omar walked around the condo like a lost soul. He would pick up an item, then put it back down. Several times he approached Maya, trying to say something, but she turned away. At one point he stopped in the middle of the room and said, I don't understand why this has to be now. Why on New Year's Eve? Maya, who was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of tea, looked up at him. Because today you called me a pig in front of everyone for the very last time. I didn't think it was that serious. I was just angry. You're always just angry, for 10 years, and I've tolerated it for 10 years, but I won't anymore. But no, Omar, we can't. We can't anymore. He lowered his head and silently left the kitchen. At 7:45, they were finally ready. Zoe, red-faced from tears and anger. Victor, stone-faced. Sylvia with the children, who still didn't understand what was happening. And Omar, bewildered, looking 10 years older in the span of an hour. They stood in the entryway, dressed and holding their bags. Maya watched them from the kitchen doorway. You'll regret this, Zoe hissed. Zoe Thalas. You'll end up alone like a dog. No one wants you but my Omar, and he'll forgive you. You'll see. He's kind, unlike you, you ingrate. Goodbye, Zoe Price, Maya replied calmly. We will meet again, Zoe pressed. I will never forgive you for this. You will answer to me for everything. Mom, let's go. Omar took her arm. He turned back to Maya. There was something new in his eyes. Not anger, not hurt, but a flicker of understanding, or perhaps just exhaustion. I'll call you after the holidays, he said. Fine. He opened the door. Zoe and Victor's family went out first. Omar lingered on the threshold. Maya? Yes? I'm sorry. For everything. She said nothing. She just watched him walk out, watched the door close, watched the lock click shut. And only then did she allow herself to cry. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but they were not tears of grief. They were tears of relief, of release. Catharsis. Maya sank to the floor, right there in the entryway, leaned her back against the wall, and cried. She cried for all the years she had forbidden herself to do so, for all the humiliations she had endured in silence, for all the dreams she had buried to save a family. She cried for a long time, maybe 5 minutes, maybe half an hour. Time lost meaning. Finally, the tears stopped. Maya got up, washed her face with cold water, and looked at herself in the mirror. She saw a woman with red eyes and a puffy nose, but there was something new in those eyes. Light, hope, life. She smiled at her reflection. Happy New Year, Maya Davis, she said out loud. To a new life. The condo seemed unusually quiet. Maya walked through the rooms as if getting acquainted with them again. Here was the living room, where her mother-in-law had sat in her grandmother's armchair for so many years. Here was the bedroom, where she had lain sleepless at night, staring at the ceiling and dreaming of a different life. Here was the kitchen, where she had spent hours preparing meals for people who didn't appreciate her. Now, all of it was just hers, her home, her space, her life. Maya opened the refrigerator. It was almost empty. All the groceries were still in the car. She chuckled. Well, she would do without holiday appetizers and pot roast tonight. She found a package of frozen dinner, her favorite kind, which she bought secretly because Omar considered them poor people food. She put water on the stove and pulled a bottle of red wine from the cabinet, a birthday gift from a colleague that she had never opened. While the water was boiling, Maya set a small table by the window and placed a candle on it, a plain white one she kept for power outages. She lit it. Through the window she could see lights flashing in the neighboring buildings, people bustling, preparing for the holiday. Somewhere, impatient fireworks were already being set off, unable to wait for midnight. Maya sat down at the table with a plate of her frozen dinner and a glass of wine. She looked at the clock. 9:30, 2.5 hours until the new year. She raised her glass. To freedom, she said to the empty room and took a sip. The wine was full-bodied and warming. The dinner was hot and delicious, and the silence was a blessing. At 11 o'clock, Keisha called. Well, how are you? Her voice was excited. I'm fine, better than fine. You kicked them out? I kicked everyone out. Good for you. You endured that. Keisha used a strong curse word, for so many years, and you finally did it. I still can't believe it. Maya smiled. Listen, why don't you come over? We have a fun crowd here. Let's ring it in together. Maya thought for a moment. No, Keisha, thank you. But I want to be alone. My first New Year's Eve alone in years. My own. You understand? I do. She could hear the smile in her friend's voice. Then Happy New Year to you, and call me any time. Thanks. Happy New Year. Maya hung up and looked out the window again. There were more fireworks now. The city was preparing for the celebration. She turned on the television just to hear human voices. Some kind of New Year's Eve show was on. The hosts laughed and guests sang songs. The usual holiday noise that used to irritate her now seemed almost cozy. Maya settled onto the sofa with a throw blanket and the rest of the wine. She didn't look at the screen. She just sat and thought about what would happen next, about the divorce she had to file, about how her life would change. There was no fear. There was anticipation, like before a long-awaited trip. At 5 minutes to midnight, Maya stood up and went to the window. The city below glowed with lights. Silhouettes of people flashed in the windows of neighboring homes. They raised glasses, hugged, and laughed. She poured herself the last sip of wine. The countdown started on the television screen. 10, 9, 8. Maya closed her eyes and made a simple wish: to be happy. Truly happy, as her mother had asked. 3, 2, 1. "Happy New Year!" the screen yelled. A firework exploded outside the window. Dozens, hundreds of lights blossomed in the night sky. A boom, a crackle, excited shouts from the street. Maya stood by the window, clutching her glass of wine to her chest, watching the celebration. For the first time in years, she was celebrating New Year's Eve alone. And for the first time in years, she was truly happy. "Happy New Year, Mom," she whispered, looking at the stars through the flashes of fireworks. "Happy New Year, Dad. I kept my promise." On January 1st, Maya slept until noon, waking up to the bright winter sun streaming through the window. She had forgotten to close the blinds. She lay there for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, recalling the previous day. Omar's call, the grocery store line, coming home, the conversation, the eviction. It happened. It really happened. She had actually done it. Maya smiled and stretched. Her body felt light and rested. For the first time in a long time, she had truly slept, without anxious dreams, without waking up in the middle of the night. She got up, showered, and brewed her coffee. Ordinary morning rituals, but today they felt different. Every action was deliberate, every moment valuable. Her phone was silent. Neither Omar nor Zoe had called. Maybe they were still sleeping off a rough night. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Maya didn't care. She sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and looked out the window at the snow-covered city. The first day of the new year. The first day of a new life. In the evening, Omar called. "Maya, we need to talk." "About what?" "About us. About all this." She paused. "Fine, but not today. Come over on January 3rd at 2 o'clock. "Why not today?" "Because I don't want to." He didn't argue. That was unusual. "All right, the 3rd at 2. See you then." Maya hung up. January 3rd. She had 2 more days to prepare, gather documents, plan what to say, and solidify her decision. Not that she doubted it, but she knew Omar would press her, try to persuade her, maybe even threaten her. She had to be ready for anything. She pulled a notepad from the drawer and started writing. A list of things to do: lawyer, divorce papers, property division, or the lack thereof, arrangements for picking up his things, and deadlines. Alimony? No children, so that wasn't relevant. Omar was working. She was working. Each would keep their own. Maya wrote and felt the situation becoming more real with every point. This wasn't a dream or a fantasy. This was her new life, which she was building with her own hands. On January 2nd, she went to her lawyer, the same one she had consulted earlier. He saw her despite the holiday, understanding that the matter was urgent. "So, you decided," he said, after listening to Maya. "Good for you. It was long overdue." He explained the divorce procedure, quick and simple through the county clerk's office since there were no minor children and both parties agreed. If Omar opposed it, they would go to court, but that wasn't frightening either. "The condo is your personal property. That is indisputable. He has no rights to it. If he makes a claim, the court will deny it. You have the law on your side." Maya nodded, took notes, and asked questions. The lawyer answered patiently. "And one more thing," he added at the end. "If he starts threatening you or using force, call the police immediately. Don't tolerate it. Don't wait. There are laws against threats. There are laws against assault. Don't hesitate to use them." "I understand. Thank you." Maya left the lawyer's office with a stack of papers and a strange sense of unreality about what was happening. Just a week ago, she was a married woman enduring humiliation from her husband and mother-in-law. And now she was free, or almost free. All that was left was to put the final period on it. On January 3rd, exactly at 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Maya opened it. Omar stood on the threshold, pale with dark circles under his eyes, without flowers, without candy. Though before, when he wanted to smooth things over, he always brought something. "Hello," he said. "Come in." He walked in, took off his coat, and looked around as if seeing the condo for the first time. Maya led him to the living room and pointed to the armchair. "Sit down. Tea? Coffee?" "No, thank you." She sat opposite him. Between them was the coffee table with the folder of documents she had prepared in advance. Omar looked at the folder. "What's this?" "Divorce papers. I've already prepared everything." He flinched. "Maya, listen." "No, Omar. You listen to me first." She spoke calmly, without emotion. She laid out everything she had thought through these past few days: the divorce, the property division, or lack thereof, the arrangements for him to remove his things, and the deadlines. Omar listened in silence. His face shifted from hope to despair, from despair to anger, and from anger to resignation. "You've already decided everything?" he finally said. "Yes." "And nothing can change it?" "No." He lowered his head and sat that way for a few minutes, staring at the floor. Then he looked up. "I was a bad husband." It sounded not like a question, but a statement of fact. "Yes, Omar, you were." "I'm sorry." Maya didn't respond. She had heard the words "I'm sorry" from him many times, after every argument, after every insult, and every time she had forgiven him. But not now. "I'll sign the papers," he said. "When do we need to?" "We can go to the county clerk's office next week. If you agree, the procedure will take about a month." He nodded. "I agree." It was unexpected. Maya had prepared for arguments, threats, and manipulation, but Omar simply gave up. "Why?" she blurted out. "What? Why? Why aren't you arguing? Why aren't you trying to change my mind?" He smiled bitterly. "What's the point? You're right about everything. I was a lousy husband. And my mother was also awful. We ruined 10 years of your life." Maya remained silent. "You know, when you kicked us out the other day, I was angry at first. I thought, how dare she? Who does she think she is? And then I started remembering everything. How we met, what you were like then, what you became. And I realized I was the one who made you that way. Unhappy. Defeated." He looked up. "You were completely different when we met. Lively, cheerful, with fire in your eyes. And then the fire went out. And I didn't even notice when." "I didn't notice either," Maya said quietly, "until it was too late. Forgive me, really, forgive me. Not so I can come back, I just need to say it. I was an idiot, and if I could go back in time— But you can't." "I can't." They were silent. Snow was falling outside the window, soft, fluffy, New Year's snow. "I'll pick up my things next week," Omar said, "if you don't mind." "I don't mind. Call ahead." He stood up. "Well then, I guess I'll see you at the county office." "See you there." Maya walked him to the door. On the threshold, he turned back. "You're beautiful," he said. "Now, I mean, you're practically glowing. I haven't seen you like this in a long time." "That's because I'm finally free." He nodded. "Goodbye, Maya." "Goodbye, Omar." The door closed. Maya leaned her back against it and closed her eyes. Her heart was pounding, but not from fear, from relief. It was over, or rather, it was the beginning. 6 months passed. Maya stood in the middle of her new kitchen admiring the result. Light-colored walls, wooden shelves, a large table by the window. Pots of basil and mint sat on the windowsill. An apple pie was browning in the oven. She had moved into the condo a week after the court finalized the divorce. Her friend Keisha had offered to help arrange the deed transfer, but Maya had declined. "Let's just leave it as is for now," she had said, "just in case." "Just in case of what?" Keisha had asked. Maya's intuition hadn't failed her. Omar had indeed tried to dispute the court's decision, filing an appeal and hiring a different attorney, but the result was the same. The condo belonged to Maya. There was nothing to divide. After the second loss, he finally backed off. Maya heard from mutual acquaintances that he had left town, maybe moved down to Florida or somewhere else. She didn't care. Tamara had tried to call once from an unfamiliar number. Maya heard her voice and silently hit the reject button. There were no more calls. At work, everything proceeded as usual. Reports, figures, documents. The routine, which had once seemed boring, was now comforting. Maya came to the office, did her job, and returned home. A simple, predictable life. But something had changed inside her. One evening, she pulled an old notebook from the cabinet, the very one where she used to write down recipes. Cakes, pastries, cookies, and candies. Some of the entries were faded. She had started them in college. Maya flipped through the pages, remembering how she had dreamed of having her own bakery, a small, cozy place that smelled of vanilla and cinnamon, a display case full of colorful pastries, and the happy faces of customers. That dream hadn't gone away. It had just taken a back seat. First because of work, then because of saving for the apartment, then because of Omar. Why not? Maya thought. She had the condo. The job was stable. She could start saving again, this time for her own business. She opened her laptop and started searching for information on how to open a bakery in Atlanta. 3 months later, Maya enrolled in pastry courses. Not because she didn't know how to bake, she did, and well, but to get an official certification. It was important for the business. The classes were held on weekends, 20 people in the group, professional equipment, and a strict French instructor who frowned at any inaccuracy in a recipe. Baking is math, he'd repeat with a strong accent. 1 gram here, 1 gram there, and it's a catastrophe. Maya worked hard. Her eclairs came out perfectly straight, the cream was airy, and the sponge cake was fluffy. The instructor praised her more often than the others. "You have a feel for it," he said one day. "That is rare. Technique can be taught, but a feel for it cannot." Maya smiled. For the first time in a long time, she felt she was moving in the right direction. Spring came early and warm that year. By April, the dogwoods were in full bloom, and Atlanta was drowning in white and pink blossoms. Maya walked home from work. She wanted to breathe and think. She walked past a small storefront on the ground floor of a residential building and suddenly stopped. For lease. The space was small, no more than 400 square feet. The display windows faced a quiet street. Nearby were apartment buildings, a school, and a daycare. A good location. Maya took out her phone and photographed the sign. That evening, she called the number and arranged a viewing. A year later, Maya's bake shop opened in that space, small and cozy, with wooden tables and soft chairs, a display case full of pastries, the smell of fresh baking, and quiet music playing through the speakers, everything just as she had once dreamed. The opening was modest, just for family and friends. Keisha, former colleagues from work, and her remaining family. Maya stood behind the counter herself, treating guests to her signature sweet potato pie made from her grandmother's recipe. "Maya, this is divine," Keisha said, licking her spoon. "You're a genius." "I just bake," Maya smiled. "No, you make people happy. That's worth a lot." Sometimes in the evenings, as she closed the bake shop, Maya thought about how her life would have turned out if things had gone differently. If she hadn't met Omar, if she hadn't fallen in love, if she hadn't seen those text messages, if she had believed him until the end and signed the condo over to him, she would be sitting in a rented one-bedroom now, no money, no home, no dream, and Omar would be celebrating his victory. But she hadn't allowed it. Maya looked at her small bake shop, at the display case with the pastries, at the tables, at the sign with her name on it, and smiled. 10 years of budgeting, 1 year of mistake, and a whole life that was finally her own. She turned off the light, locked the door, and went home, to her condo, to her life. "I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, Show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day, and now 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.